Good morning, Title I Committee of Practitioners. Thank you so much for joining the meeting this morning. I'm Tara Rodriguez. I'm the Director of the School and Program Improvement at the Kentucky Department of Education, and I want to welcome you this morning. I know we've had some challenging weather, so I'm so glad you all have been able to join us. We'll go ahead and get started here with the roll call. You may also notice that there are some presenters on the meeting as well as some folks here to help us with the technical aspects of the meeting. But let me go ahead and let's find out who's here with us from the committee this morning. Jan Anger, Ashley Burnett,
Here.
Christina Dalton, Ricky Hanger,
Here.
Stephanie Harris,
Here.
Diane Hatfield, Holly Kimball,
Here.
Kendra McGuire,
Here.
David Melanti,
I'm here.
Robert Cheryl Tanner,
Here.
and Daryl Vincent. Again, thank you all so much for being here. I know it's been probably a very hectic morning for a lot of you, so very glad that you're here. And let's go ahead and talk a little bit about the purpose of our committee, just as a reminder. If we can go to the next slide. This is a committee that is mandated in statute, and its charge is to review and comment on the rules, regulations, and policies related to the Kentucky Department of Education's administration of Title I programs under the Every Student Succeeds Act. And there you have a link to the web page. We do have a web page for Title I Committee of Practitioners on our KDE website. And so we really want to hear from you. You'll see some presentations today, but we've tried to work in some questions to get your feedback on our implementation of Title I programs. So hopefully, if you have any questions at all, or if you have some feedback for us on how our implementation of Title I has gone in your district or in your work, please be sure to let us know. Feedback's very important to us. And so let's go on to the next slide, and we will take a look at some of the discussion items that we have on our agenda today. First, Helen Jones will be here. She's from the Office of Assessment and Accountability, and she's going to talk to us about the federal grants for state educational agencies related to state assessment. Then we will have a school improvement update from Veronica Bowler and Trey Smallwood, who are here in the division. We will have a Title I Part D overview and update from Monica Higgins and Wes Blake. And then David Melanti will give us an update and overview of equitable services for private and home schools. And then hopefully we will have a few minutes to get your feedback on any future agenda topics that you would like to have at our next meeting in April. So we will go ahead and get started first, and welcome Helen Jones. Thank you so much for being here and sharing this overview and update for us on the state assessment grants.
Thank you, Tara. And thank you, everyone, for having me today. My name is Helen Jones, and I'm an academic program manager in the Office of Assessments and Accountability, and I'm in the Division of Assessments and Accountability Support. So let's go to the agenda. You move. Thank you. So today, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about Title I Part B, which will include, we have a guiding question for you. I'll cover the purpose of Title I Part B grant fundings for state. I will also discuss the uses in Kentucky, the formula grant for state assessments, as well as other uses, which is a competitive grant that the state has. I'll discuss the future plans for assessments and accountability through Framework 4.0 and how a portion of Title I Part B supports this work. We will share what's happening now, which is a bill that was introduced for a new accountability system, House Bill 257. I'm just going to cover the highlights of the bill. Keep in mind that the legislative session just began, and the bill is very new, so it could change, but I do want to share where we are with that work. So if we could go to the next section. Okay. So for the guiding question, what supports and resources are available for state educational agency to effectively measure and advance the academic growth of our students? So we can move to the next, we can go on to section 5. So I'm going to give you an overview of grant funding. The purpose of Title I is to provide all children with significant opportunities to receive a fair and equitable, high-quality education and to close educational achievement gaps. Title I, as you know, consists of several parts. The following are formula grants. So we have Part A, that's improving basic programs. Part B, which is going to be the focus of my presentation, the state assessment grant. Part C, education of migratory students. Part D, prevention and intervention of neglected and delinquent at risk youth. And Part E, flexibility of equitable per pupil funding. So let's get started. You can move to the next one. Thank you. My presentation, as I said, will focus on the state use of Title I, Part B. The funds for developing and administering robust assessments. The funds are distributed to states through formula-based on poverty data as well as student counts. And it's not a competitive application. Funds allocated through Part B support the development of Kentucky content assessments, which are used to align, which are assess the state standards. These assessments are used to monitor student achievements and identify areas of improvement. Part B also covers the costs related to developing, administering, and reporting assessment results required under ESSA. The state uses the funds to ensure accountability for student outcomes and equitable access to a high-quality education. The funds provide essential measurement tools for evaluating the effectiveness of Title I Part A program. Move to the next slide. In Kentucky, the state annually administers the Kentucky Summative Assessments, or KSA, in grades 3 through 8, 10, and 11. The Kentucky Summative Assessment is administered during the last 14 instructional days of the school year, which is also in state law. All students in Kentucky take the KSA. There are very few exceptions. For instance, students in the alternate assessment program, and they actually take a version of KSA, but it's called the alternate Kentucky Summative Assessments. And the students in this program are students with the most severe cognitive disabilities. Students who, one of the other exceptions would be students who are enrolled in Job Corps centers and students who have a medical non-participation that is approved, as well as students who are expelled without services. They also do, these are the exceptions of students who do not take the KSA. The KSA test itself, we assess reading and mathematics, and those are administered annually to students in grades 3 through 8 and 10. Science is administered annually for students in grades 4, 7, and 11. Social studies and writing are administered annually in grades 5, 8, and 11. And writing has two constructs, and that's the on-demand as well as the extended response. Also in Kentucky state law, which requires all students in grade 11 to take a college admissions exam. The college admissions exam is one measure of post-secondary readiness. A portion of Title I Part B is used for college admissions exam for our juniors. I will note that as a result of the procurement process, the current juniors will take the SAT. The SAT replaces the ACT. Now, the college admissions exam traditionally is administered in March and will also be administered soon, this coming March. The results of these assessments are reported in the fall on our state report card, as well as to the USED, U.S. Department of Education. Kentucky receives approximately $5 to $6 million annually to support the requirements of Part B. And those are the formula portions that comes to each state. Okay, so we can move to the next slide. You can go on to the next one. Thank you. So far, we've talked about the formula portion of Part B, which includes the development, administration, and everything which goes into reporting of student results. The U.S. Department of Education has constructed Title I Part B such that a portion at the federal level are allocated for competitive grants to help states improve the quality and effectiveness of their assessment program. State educational agencies who apply for the competitive grant for state assessment, or CGSA, and receive the approval may use the funds for projects such as developing systems that incorporate multiple measures of academic achievements other than the traditional tests or interim assessments. The states may use this for creating innovative assessments instruments such as performance tests, technology-based assessments, computer adaptive assessments, and competency-based models, which they have to still be aligned to the state standards. Move to the next one. Thank you. So in 2021, the Kentucky Department of Education embarked upon a quest to reimagine assessments and accountability in Kentucky. This consisted of statewide listening sessions to gather input on the future of assessments and accountability. This led to the formation of the Kentucky United We Learn Council, which is a group of parents, students, educators, and legislators to carry this vision forward. The council established a vision for the work and what has been designated as the moonshot, or a goal to design an accountability system that is both meaningful and useful to all students. In Kentucky, in 2022, Kentucky Department of Education applied for and received a competitive grant for $3 million. As a result of receiving the funds, the agency has continued to advance the vision of the Cool Council by continuing to engage stakeholders from across the state through convenings and surveys. The feedback was used to develop 4 prototypes, and with stakeholder feedback, this led to 3 framework. Framework 3.0 was shared with stakeholders during 8 town halls, and based on feedback was revised to the final version of Framework 4.0, which was presented to and approved by the Kentucky Board of Education and the local Superintendent Advisory Council. Framework 4.0 reflects years of extensive stakeholder input and a vision for a new accountability and assessment system in Kentucky. You can move to the next. The Cool Council work is paying off. Kentucky is in the advocacy phase of the for the moonshot. And so far, as a result of those town halls and stakeholder input, we have a bill. We can move to the next one. So on January 8th, House Bill 257 was introduced by Senator J.T. Payne. The bill includes an option for locally developed indicators of quality and state accountability that meets federal requirements. Local accountability would include flexible options for districts to set their own indicators in collaboration with their community. This is a shift, okay? You can move to the next one. The original model for 4.0 and the current bill version assigns the accountability system into two categories. We have state accountability indicators that meet federal requirements for CSI, and we also have the local accountability indicators which require options and inclusions that are not used in the calculation of comprehensive support and improvement. In the current bill version, the phrase local indicators of quality replaces the phrase local accountability. In House Bill 257, if it's adopted, the state would remove writing in the state assessments and include reading, mathematics, science, and social studies would be assessed and used for accountability with the comprehensive support and improvement identification. The bill would also remove change and replace it with individual student growth, and would remove the quality of school climate and safety and replace it with chronic absenteeism. I would like to caution, though, those are just the highlights of the bill. I want to caution that the Kentucky legislative session has only begun, and the bill could be revised once it goes to committee. So what's next? The college admissions exam will be administered in March, and the juniors will be taking the SAT for the first time in Kentucky. Followed by the annual spring administration of the Kentucky Summative Assessments for all content areas. So do we have any questions? I know that was a lot of information. So I want to pause here to see if we have any questions.
Ms. Jones, I just have kind of a question or a comment around one of the things that we saw in the new bill that you mentioned was taking out the survey and replacing it with chronic absenteeism. Can you speak to the thought process on that at all? I don't think there's a district or a school in our state that is not working extremely hard on trying to decrease chronic absenteeism, but kind of why they've decided to include it in our accountability model.
Well, that was a legislative decision. We were a little surprised as well. So what I do know is that they are working. What I will say is that when we got the bill, we were a little surprised as well to see that. And but that was a legislative decision. But the goal from the department's position is that we're trying to ensure that we have a definition that actually works for our districts as well. So at least we're trying to collaborate with our senators and our legislative body to just ensure that that indicator represents what's happening in our school. So, but yeah, that we were a little surprised as well. I'll just say that. Any other questions? Well, again, I just want to thank you guys so very much for having me. If you think of anything else and you need to reach out to me, please do not hesitate. I can make sure that Tara has my contact information and she can forward any questions that you may have. And we will be watching this closely. And again, this is really early on. You know, the session started January 6th and we go until mid-April. So a lot can happen between now and then. So thank you.
Thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate your sharing this information with us.
You're welcome.
All right, let's go to our next. Our next presentation is a school improvement overview and update, and we have Veronica Bowler and Trey Smallwood here from the District 180 in our Division of School and Program Improvement. Veronica and Trey.
Good morning, everyone. I hope everyone's staying safe and warm this morning. It's snowing pretty good here in Frankfort still. We are here to talk about school improvement overview and update. So this is going to be everything from general school improvement that all schools have to do or all A1 schools have to do, all the way to the federal designation. My name's Trey Smallwood. This is what I work on every day. I'm a former classroom teacher. I taught high school English up until this school year when I joined the department. And so I know the challenges that we're facing in the classroom every day. And I'm joined today by Veronica Bowler. I'll let her introduce herself.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Veronica Bowler. I've been with KDE for about 3 years now, working for District 180. So we work with school improvement. And before that, I taught in Fayette County for about 10 years. Thanks for being here today.
Next slide, please, Leslie. Next slide. So here we have the comprehensive improvement planning timeline for all districts and all schools. All A1 schools have to go through each of these diagnostics. So you can see it's broken down into 4 phases. And you can see what is required for the district and which is required for the school in each of these phases. A couple of things I want to point out is that in phase 2, there was a new diagnostic this year. That's the district trauma-informed approach plan. We saw pretty great success on districts getting that turned in. So we appreciate districts for doing that. We're currently in phase 4. You can see that we always mark phase 4 as being basically the whole year, because you should be constantly be engaging in progress monitoring of these plans. Your school improvement plan and your needs assessment, they're living documents that you can go back to. So you should be constantly monitoring how those are going. But you can see May 1st, we have 3 diagnostics due for the district. The English Learner Plan, also called the LAU Plan, the Continuation of Learning Plan for districts, and the Professional Development Plan for districts. And for schools, we have the Professional Development Plan for schools due on May 1st. We have a link down here. I think we'll get you a copy of these slides, but you can also find all of this on our KDE webpage under the Comprehensive Improvement Planning tab. Next slide, please. So one of the big things that we do as part of the CSIP process is the needs assessment and data review. So this is an annual needs assessment that all A1 schools must do to evaluate their academic and their non-academic data. So these data sources can include state assessments if it's available. As we know that was slightly delayed this year, so that wasn't necessarily available for this needs assessment. However, we always encourage schools and districts to use local benchmarks. You can use those formative assessments that you're taking throughout the year. You can also use post-secondary readiness data, behavior data, attendance, climate. All of those are valuable data sources that can go into the needs assessment. Once you have done these needs assessments, it should inform your CSIP goals, which I'll talk about in just a second. One thing we always like to note is that the School-Based Decision-Making Council must participate and approve the resulting priorities. They should really be involved in this process throughout the whole thing. Next slide, please. So the CSIP and the CDIP are both required in statute. You can see the revised statute there. And the schools must annually review data and adopt a plan to ensure that each student makes progress towards meeting goals. So the CSIP serves as the school's formal plan to address those goals, and the CDIP in turn is the district's plan. The statute also says, so in state law, that it should be developed with the involvement of parents, faculty, and staff. We really value those stakeholder connections in building the CSIP and the CDIP. And sometimes when we're reviewing these plans, we don't necessarily see the involvement of parents, faculty, and staff. We see a lot of times that it's been developed either just by a principal or just by the site-based. And we really want to make sure that we're including the stakeholders that you all work with every day. For those of you, I'm assuming that's most of you, are operating a Title I school-wide program. This plan meets the requirements under Section 1114 of the Every Student Succeeds Act. And so this is your school-wide plan. We don't require a separate plan in Kentucky. Next slide, please. We have updated some templates this year that we just want to make you aware of. You can find these updated templates on our webpage. So you can see that all the previous elements remain on our new streamlined goal building templates. The only thing we did was we combined the measures of success with progress monitoring. That's made it a little bit easier on our districts and our schools to understand how those two work together. We have made it where you only have 2 required goal areas now. Again, these are required by statute. The achievement gap in the state assessment results in reading and mathematics. And then everything else is now an optional priority goal. So those state assessment results in science, social studies, and writing. If your needs assessment shows that, for example, you need particular improvement in writing, then that's certainly a goal you can write to, but it's not a required goal anymore. Same with English learner progress, school climate, post-secondary readiness, and graduation rates for high schools and districts.
Let's pause just for a second. It looks like Ms. Hanger may have some comments she's putting in the chat. Can we, Ms. Hanger, do you care to unmute and just provide that feedback? So, because on the recording, I don't think chat will show up. So just so everybody can hear what you're thinking, because we definitely want to hear your feedback.
Yeah, I've been overseeing these programs now in my role for 6 years and then formerly as a principal for 6.5. And I do feel like this is a much better process that we have currently where the eProve and the Title I needs assessment runs simultaneously with the school-wide programs. And I feel like embedding it all within CSIP makes sense. It has simplified things, and I do feel it's in a much better place than it was a couple years ago, where it was more isolated the way that we were having to do the assessments and double the work, when really it's all the same body of work and should be connected back with closing gaps in your reading and math programs. So I just want to say, I know it was a little comment he made, but like kudos, we need to keep moving in that same direction.
Thank you for that feedback.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments on these updated templates or the school-wide plan? Thank you all. Next slide, please. So now we're going to move more into federal identification. So these are requirements from ESSA that we have to federally identify these schools. And I am going to talk about TSI and ATSI more specifically, and then I'll turn it over to Veronica, who's going to talk about CSI. So TSI, or Targeted Support and Improvement, excuse me, we identified this in fall of 2025. We do this annually. So it is having one or more of the same subgroups, and I'll talk about subgroups here in a minute, performing as poorly as all students in the lowest 5% of schools in Kentucky. And we identify that by level, so elementary, middle, or high. And that subgroup has to be in that lowest performing 5% based on 3 years of data. So this past identification cycle is based on 22-23 school year, the 23-24 school year, and the 24-25 school years data. And so when we take that bottom 5% cut, is applied to the overall score of each federally defined subgroup. We get questions sometimes of if this 5% cut point is only for example, reading and mathematics. It's not. It's for that overall score of that federally defined subgroup. Next slide, please. So ATSI takes TSI a step further. And this is the first time that we've identified ATSI since COVID. We do this every 3 years, and to meet ATSI, you must have a school that was TSI in the immediately preceding year, and those students still have one or more subgroups performing in the bottom 5% in the year that we do the ATSI identification. So we do ATSI identification every 3 years. However, you may have only been TSI for 1 year, but because we do it in a 3-year cycle, you're ATSI that next year. And so that's something that confuses some people, thinking that they have to be TSI for 3 years before they become ATSI. That's not necessarily true. You can be TSI and then the next year be ATSI. So we identified in 2025 this year. We won't identify ATSI again until 2028. However, why we like to put a lot of emphasis on ATSI is because this does start the clock for CSI designation. And Veronica is now going to talk to you about CSI.
Next slide, please, Leslie.
Oh, sorry, I forgot to mention about the subgroups. So one thing I have the subgroups listed here. You can see all the different ones that the federal government has defined. Obviously, we don't see all of these in Kentucky as identified subgroups. They can be, we just don't have some of these populations enough to be a federally defined subgroup. I'll tell you that 80% of us all ATSI schools right now are identified either for the students with disabilities or who have IEPs or our English Learners Plus Monitors group. That makes up the vast majority of our ATSI right now. And some schools are even identified for multiple subgroups at the same time. Now I'll turn it over to Veronica.
All right, so I'm going to talk to you about CSI, or Comprehensive Support and Improvement Identification. We just identified back in the fall. So there are a few criteria here that could land you in CSI. The first one is if your school's in the lowest 5% of schools by level. So it's broken up elementary, middle, and high, and then ranked, and those bottom 5% of each level are then considered CSI. This uses all of the measures that Helen was talking about earlier. You saw there's some talk in the legislation about changing that, but as of now, they do use all of the indicators and that overall score for the accountability system to get that bottom 5%. Also, if your high school and your 4-year cohort graduation rate is below 80%, that's another way that you could be identified for CSI. And then the other way, as Trey was just mentioning, is if you are TSI and then the next year ATSI is identified and you're still TSI, you get ATSI status. You then have 3 years to exit that. And if you don't, then you roll over to the CSI status. And I will say that the rolling over to the CSI status is sort of a way to keep a pulse check on those schools that have the subgroups that they just can't pull up. And then we would come in and give that assistance that's given to the CSI schools. Next slide, please. So when you are a federally identified school, there are a few more steps that you've got to take for your CSIP. If you do have that ATSI, TSI, or CSI status, you have to revise your CSIP to meet the statutory or regulatory requirements for that designation. If you're a CSI school, you'll actually revise your plan to be a turnaround improvement plan. And there are also addendums for each of those levels. Those are linked here on the slides and also on that web page that we mentioned earlier. And you will basically complete this and then upload that separately with your CSIP. So it's a separate document. That's a change for this year. It was included at the bottom of our CSIP template priorly, but it is now a separate document that you would fill out. There's several questions. And then also something we don't see as often is the merging of what's put in that addendum into the actual CSIP or CDIP. So just be mindful if you are one of those federally identified schools that this isn't just an extra page to fill out. This is to help you really align your work to pull that performance for your subgroup up. Also wanted to mention that the CSI schools we've identified for this year, they are all the bottom 5% for their reason. I forgot to mention that earlier. And next slide, please. So for this year, across our state, we had 39 schools identified for targeted support improvement, 101 schools for ATSI, and we've got 50 schools that are CSI in the state. We've also got those web pages linked there as well. If you all would like to see anything more, there's rosters of the schools there as well. Next slide. Here we've got some links of different resources for you all. There are some significant changes with how the CSIP and CDIP look this year. So we made a screencast that really goes over all of those changes and also just some good information about how you can bring a team together when it comes to putting this work in. As Trey mentioned, we do realize that principals are often taking this heavy load on themselves, and we know that principals have so much work they're already doing. So just reminders that it is a team process to bring in those stakeholders, and we go through all of the changes and show you the templates and such as well on that screencast. Then we've got our web page, those templates, and when you click that link, it will download the template automatically. Also, if you're one of our lucky schools that gets chosen for CSIP or CDIP monitoring, then you get graded by us, and we have rubrics that we use for those. And honestly, when schools go through this process, they, of course, at first are not super excited, but then afterwards they realize, wow, I've really learned a lot about what this process should be like and what my plan, needs to look like. So those rubrics are available even if you're not being monitored with your plan, if you would like to see what it is that we're looking for high quality planning there. Also just have the addendums linked and the user manual for our SIP, which is the Cognia eProof platform. That alone can give some trouble. Even with the CSIP and CDIP uploads, there's a very particular place that it needs to be uploaded or it won't mark as complete, which can be very confusing and frustrating. So that's helpful. And just also please keep in mind that Trey and I are more than happy to help you with anything on the technical side with Cognia and eProof, and also on that work when it comes to your improvement planning. And I think the next slide just shows us, or shows you all, our contact information, and as well as our wonderful leader, branch manager, Ruth Swanson. So please feel free to reach out to any of us with any questions. And of course, if you have any questions right now, we'll take those too. And thank you all so much for your time.
All right, does anybody have a comment? Is anybody, any additional comments about the planning process or about these CSI, ATSI, and TSI designations? Any
Yeah, I
questions or
am
comments? Yeah.
curious as to why it was embedded with the CSIP, CDIP, and now it's a different addendum. Why did you all pull that apart?
So my guess for that is accessibility. The way that the documents flow, where they're public facing documents that need to be uploaded to each school's website with the CSIP, there's some pretty stringent rules for how screen readers can take those documents and read them. That was a reason I believe behind changing from that table format as well. And so my guess for that is that it was an accessibility thing, but I can't tell you for sure if that's why. I'm sorry, I don't have more for you there, but that's kind of my guess. Trey, do you have any idea why we separated those out?
I've also heard that a lot of schools when it had the CSIP and the addendums underneath it for all schools, the schools weren't taking them out or not understanding that they didn't have to complete them, and so that they were still completing them sometimes. And so we just wanted to make it clear that the vast majority of our schools, 91% of schools just have to do that CSIP or the CDIP, and then 10% of schools have to do that additional addendum. That's a separate page.
Okay.
It's really the same information. Nothing changed. It's just more accessible.
Do they have somewhere else? I mean, we don't have any of those, so I was just curious. Do they have somewhere else in eProof now? They have to update that outside of just the CSIP?
No,
they
they
just
just
upload them together.
Just an additional attachment?
That's
Yes.
right.
Okay. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay, is there any additional questions or comments? All right, thank you so much, Veronica and Trey, for being with us this morning and for sharing your information. Really appreciate that. All right, now we move to our Title I Part D update, and we have with us Wes Blake and Monica Higgins.
Good morning, everyone. We are excited to share with you today and give you a brief overview of the Title I Part D program. I am Monica Higgins, a program consultant for the Kentucky Department of Education, and I have been working with the Title I Part D program for over 13 years, along with my colleague, Wes Blake. And Wes, if you could introduce yourself.
Hi folks, how are y'all doing?
All right, Leslie, if we can go to the next slide. You might be thinking, what is the Title I Part D program? The Title I Part D program was amended in 2015 and reauthorized under the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, ESEA, and the Title I Part D program provides funding for youth who are either neglected, delinquent, or at risk. Next slide. The goals. The goals of the Title I Part D program are to improve educational services for students to ensure academic standards and to provide students with transitional services to help them move from one placement to the next placement and to have them to have further schooling, employment, and transition back into the community. Now, let's keep in mind that transitions are very important, and my colleague Wes will talk more about transitions a little bit later. And also, looking at the last goal is to provide students with a great support system to ensure they have a great continued education. Next slide, Leslie. The Title I Part D program is broken down among two subparts. Subpart 1 works with two state agencies, such as the Department of Juvenile Justice, as well as the Department of Corrections. Both state agencies are responsible for providing free public education for children and youth. And Subpart 2 works in collaboration with the local education agencies within a facility. Next slide, Leslie. The difference between neglected and delinquent, and there are some differences. The term neglected is used and reflects to a child other than a foster home and can be voluntarily placed, and the child is in state custody, and this is due to abandonment, neglect, or death of his or her parents or guardian. Now, looking at the term delinquent, this is used in respects to a child who resides in a public or private residential facility, and the student may have been adjudicated or delinquent or in need of supervision. Next slide. Our next point is to give you a synopsis of what is allowable and what is not allowable using Title I Part D funds. For example, allowable services include books as well as non-allowable services such as meals. Now, before I move on, are there any questions? All right, Leslie, hearing none, let's move to the next slide. Allocations are generated by the coordinators of the Title I Part D program. They complete an annual child count, and the annual child count helps to generate their funding. The allocations may range anywhere from $1,000 all the way up to $200,000 for each individual facility. Now, please keep in mind that the Title I Part D program is focused on helping students to improve their educational services and help students to transition. And with that in mind, I'm going to turn it over now to my colleague, Wes Blake.
Thank you, Monica. So perfect slide here. We're on the transition slide and we come to me. So like Monica said, transition is a key goal of the Title I Part D program. So as Monica had said, when we say transition, what we mean, we've got students in neglected and delinquent facilities. We want them to be equipped to move out of those facilities into their communities, into their regular, traditional education environments, regular schools, or perhaps jobs. So a lot of these students, oftentimes you'll see they will move from placement to placement. They will be behind on credits. And so a lot of times getting them caught up on credits is a goal, getting them vocational skills that they can, when they get out of the facility, they will have an opportunity to do well and to be part of the community. So that's the ultimate goal there. For Subpart 1, there's as you can see here, there's a requirement that a certain percentage of funds be allocated for transition. And for Subpart 2, the programs are allowed to use funds for transition. A lot of times in a school district, this will look like a dropout prevention program or something like that that helps students that come from the facilities into the school districts. Next slide, please. So you can see here are some examples of transition supports. So personal, often you'll see any physical health supports that student needs, mental health supports, vocational technical counseling, any assistance to if the student wants to pursue post-secondary, there's supports in place for that. There's job placement. You can see another thing I do want to point out here. Guest speakers are really important in Title I Part D programs because oftentimes these students may not have been around people who are accountants or are dentists or are, you name it, you go down the list. And so when they meet people, they just see that as a viable option. And so guest speakers are a way that facilities will sometimes help support students transition into life after the facilities. Next slide. So funding for transition, you can see here some ways that this is often used. It's a great idea to have a transition coordinator. One thing we see a lot in these programs, and those of you that work with these programs will know this, and those of you that don't may not, but oftentimes these students, they move from placement to placement, and having a person who the funding is used to have a person whose job is to make sure they've collected all their credits and to make sure all of them are gathered and all of them go with the student to the next placement is very helpful because these things can get lost in translation, and also making sure that they're, if they have an IEP, making sure that all those details follow them carefully to the next placement or gathered. And this requires a lot of work. These folks will often make a lot of phone calls and a lot of follow-up, but it's such important work, and it helps these students so much and gives them a sense of hope. It gives them a chance to be successful. Tutoring and mentoring is another common way that this is used as well. Next slide, please. All right, some more funding for transition. A lot of times we'll see coordination of health and social services that are needed for students. And again, peer mediation and mentoring are often used too. Next slide. So this is a topic that facility eligibility is a topic that the U.S. Department of Education has been focusing on over the last few years. Long story short, this has always been in the statute, but it's something that has been emphasized more lately by the U.S. Department of Education. So in Kentucky, we're working to make sure we're compliant. So what this means, facility eligibility. In order for a facility, a neglected or delinquent facility to be eligible, what needs to happen is we need to ensure that the facility primarily serves adjudicated or court-ordered neglected or delinquent students. So for majority, we just mean very simply, at least 51 out of the 100 students that are served need to be, court-ordered or adjudicated. So that's what we're looking at there. And this is something that Kentucky's been working on to be compliant over the last year in particular. And we've communicated this with our programs and are working with them. Next slide, please. All right, we come to the questions. What questions do you all have about Title I Part D? Anything about goals, maybe transition, maybe that facility eligibility? What questions do you have generally about Title I-D? And a follow-up there, if anybody has any, has a program, anybody have any questions about how your program works with local businesses, or perhaps want to share what that looks like, perhaps some guest speakers and internships that you have in your district. Third question I'll throw out there, and if anybody has any questions, please speak up and just let us know. But the new facility eligibility guidance and KDE's work, does anyone want to speak to how that's impacting your Title I Part D programs in your districts?
And what Wes just already alluded to, we know that facility eligibility is, we have a lot of brand new guidance. So if you have any questions, please speak up.
And we will say too, before we move on to that very last question we had for you all, if you do have questions about this, don't hesitate to reach out to Monica or I. We're happy to help. We're happy to work with programs on the, on your district level. We're happy to work with you and talk with you about that. We're being very deliberate about how we're looking into this, and we're being doubly and triply careful to make sure that we're being compliant, but also that we're maximizing the funds and the eligibility of our Kentucky facilities and students that are eligible. So that's what we're working on behind the scenes, and we're happy to talk with you if you have specific questions or concerns anytime. Last thing, I'll kind of leave you with the last question at least. Any additional things that we can do at KDE to help support your Title I Part D programs? All right. Next slide, please. If you have questions, interrupt me at any point. I just wanted to share some resources with you here. You've got the KDE website, IndyTAC. They're the tech center that provides assistance for U.S. Department of Education. They have a transition toolkit, and you've heard Monica and I talk about how critical transition is to Title I Part D. So there are some resources for you here. And next slide, please, Leslie. And final slide here. If you do have any questions about anything we've talked about, please don't hesitate. My email, Monica's email, our phone number is right there. And thank you all so much for your time.
Thank you.
All right, let's pause for one more, give everybody one more chance in case anybody does think of a comment or a question before we move on. Any further comments or questions for Wes or Monica? All right, thank you both so much for joining and for sharing your overview and update of Title I Part D.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, we'll go on to our next presentation, which is on equitable services for private and home schools. And David Malonte is on next to share information with us about that topic.
Well, good morning. My name is David Malonte again. I am one of the assistant directors in TARES division. I'm a member of this committee, and I also serve as the non-public school ombudsman for programs served under the Every Student Succeeds Act. Leslie, let's go to the next one. So I'm going to talk a little bit with you today about equitable services for private home schools. We're going to talk a little bit about Kentucky specific requirements. We'll talk a little bit about requirements under the Every Student Succeeds Act. It's going to be very high level today because I know we have a range of backgrounds on the call, and then want you to be thinking a little bit about, in my role as ombudsman, what needs, guidance requests, or support requests do you have regarding homeschools, and add to that private schools as well in your community, and any perspective counts here. So that's kind of our guiding question as ombudsman. What kind of support can I provide you as a district, as a private school representative, or any other perspective for that matter. Okay, Leslie, let's go to the next. So I want to start the body of the presentation by saying we have two separate private school contacts in our division. One is me. I serve as, again, the ombudsman for ESSA programs, primarily focusing on providing guidance to different stakeholders that may be within the agency. It could be school districts or private schools or home schools about the requirements of ESSA. And this is a required position. It's going to vary state to state how that's laid out. For me, it's additional duties. In some states, they may have a couple people serving in that role only. But again, in that role, I have to monitor and enforce statutory requirements. For the most part, that's done through technical assistance requests, for example. And then we also have a liaison for Kentucky specific non-public school and homeschool requirements. Her name's Amanda Rice Snyder. I provided a link to her email and contact information. And her job is really to consult with constituents and provide guidance and information about Kentucky specific private school and homeschool requirements. So she maintains some guidance documents, a contact page for homeschools and non-public schools, and really focuses on disseminating information Kentucky specific. Okay, let's go to the next one. So we're going to talk a little bit about private homeschool requirements in Kentucky. Number one, Section 5 of our state's constitution gives parents the right to choose the education environment that best meets their children's needs. And that statement in blue says, nor shall any man be compelled to send his child to any school to which he may be conscientiously opposed. So that gives parents rights to choose public school, private school, or a different non-public school environment. So keep in mind through this presentation that in Kentucky, homeschools are considered private schools, which again, that might differ from state to state along with all the requirements that come with that responsibility. Okay, let's go to the next. So there are some basic governing statutes for private homeschools. The first is compulsory attendance in 159.010. And then the second kind of follows up on that constitutional statement, which 159.030 exempts compulsory attendance in public school if enrolled in a private or homeschool. 159.040 requires maintenance of attendance and scholarship reports in homeschools and private schools. 159.160 requires submission of an annual enrollment notice to the district. So either a private school or the parents will be contacting the district annually to say, hey, my kids are going to be attending a private school or a homeschool. Here are their names and ages. And some districts may require some additional information, for example, the address, to double check whether or not that's within their attendance boundaries. But really, all that is required up front through the statute is names, ages, and it does say places of residence, but it may also include, your district may include like asking for the actual location of the private school itself. And then 158.070 and 080 define the length of the student instructional year, which in statute must be at least 1,062 hours. That's instructional hours. Okay, Leslie, let's go to the next. So the Every Student Succeeds Act requires districts to offer and provide, if accepted, services to private schools and homeschools. Those covered programs are Title I Part A, Part C, Title II Part A, Title III Part A, and Title IV Parts A and B. So typically if there are homeschools and private schools within, or even for Title I Part A outside your district boundaries, you as a district person may be sending out and collecting some information from private schools and home schools. That generally starts with a letter of intent. For Title I. For other programs, it's going to be what we call a declaration of participation that has to be completed each year. That basically gives you an idea of who wants to participate in these programs on an annual basis, and gives you some information around the enrollment, and for the declaration piece of that, the qualifying status of students to participate in certain programs. Okay, next slide, Leslie. So the Every Student Succeeds Act is about districts offering services, not funds, to private homeschools. So a district is not writing a check for them to carry out their own services. A district has to collaboratively plan, has to implement, and provide oversight and evaluation throughout the year to those services being provided. So again, district provides and maintains control of services, including funds. And then there should be a consultation process carried out throughout the year, so it's ongoing, to address emerging needs, to kind of get a start on evaluation, whether services are working and making improvements for what they're targeting. That is, again, ongoing consultation through the year. Services through the ESSA could include direct student services, parent-family engagement, professional learning for teachers of participating students. And the next slide kind of breaks that down into some more specific examples. So this is not an all-inclusive list. There are lots of things that might be done through the Equitable Services Program. For students, it could include things such as after-school tutoring, mentoring or counseling programs, tech-based supplemental instruction. For parent and family engagement, it could be things about how to support students at home with particular instructional methods or supports. It could be relationship building between families and schools. It could be literacy initiatives for parents. And then for teachers, it's going to be a wide range of professional development services across various topics. Again, those activities are identified and agreed to in an initial consultation between the district and a private or homeschool, and then they're evaluated throughout the year through ongoing consultation. So let's go to the next slide, Leslie. So I want to wrap it up by seeing if there is any kind of support from the ombudsman role that I could provide, whether that's questions, guidance requests, or different support requests from any perspective to improve quality of homeschool and non-public school services across the state. And I am open to any suggestions that might come about.
David, I have a question.
Sure.
Can you speak to, is there any type of monitoring of like homeschools? You know, once a family decides to homeschool and they turn in their letter, is that the responsibility of a district, or is there any monitoring of that?
Yeah, that is the responsibility of the DPP, and DPPs are probably so overworked that is hard. Typically that occurs when DPPs get complaints. You know, bus driver drives by, they know it's a homeschool, kids are playing out in the yard when they should be at school. So those types of things. But statutorily, those attendance records and grade records have to be open to DPP inspection at any time. So they could request to go in there at any time. As far as monitoring of services goes, we do that through our program monitoring, but we do not so much handle the monitoring of whether a homeschool or private school is carrying out a bona fide educational program. Great question.
David,
Okay.
this is Kendra McGuire from
Sure.
the Diocese of Covington. So
Mhm.
I think that each year that KDE might do some training opportunities for the LEAs. Has there ever been any consideration of hosting a meeting for leaders in non-public schools to better understand how the consultation process works or anything like that, for across Kentucky?
So you're talking specifically about leadership in non-public schools?
Yes, just to
Yeah.
understand,
Yeah.
I know that's one of the challenges I have with new principals coming in and working
Sure.
with their local LEA. And I usually, we do direct them to the resources on the website. I just didn't know if that was ever a consideration, just
Yeah.
to do an informational meeting for those people.
Yeah, so if that's something you are interested in doing, that's a service I could provide. You might talk through the non-public schools commission meeting to see if there's other interest as well. But all
Okay.
you'd have to do is reach out to me. Wouldn't have to go through a district or anything like that. You could reach out directly to me and request some sort of technical assistance or guidance or whatever it may be.
Okay, thank
Yeah,
you.
so think about that. I know I think there's a meeting coming up with the non-public school commission February 2nd. And if that'd be a good place to put it on the agenda, maybe.
Yeah, that sounds great. Thank you.
Yeah. Anything else? Okay, Tara, I'll turn it back to you.
All right. Thank you, David. Thank you very much for presenting for us. Our last item before we adjourn is just to look forward to our next meeting, which will be on April the 29th, and it should be at the same time as this one. And I wanted to check to see if you all have any requests for topics you would like to discuss. If there's anything I can arrange for here, a speaker or a presenter here at KDE, I'd be glad to do that. If you have any requests like that.
What was the date, Tara?
It is April the 29th.
I would suggest maybe a legislative update.
Okay, I'll
I don't
check
know
on
if
that.
that would be, I don't know if that would be of interest to people here. But we'll definitely have some additional information at that time.
Okay, we'll definitely check on that. Are there any other suggestions or interests in particular topics that anyone else has?
Here, I was thinking too, any updates to around the federal funding and kind of what we should be anticipating moving forward.
Okay, we will check into that as well. Thank you for the suggestions. Is there anything else regarding, any processes that KDE does around Title I, monitoring or guidance we provide, training? Are there any questions that you would like to suggest as a topic for next time? All right. Well, thank you all so much for being here. I really appreciate your time and your certainly your feedback that you provide us. It's very helpful in helping us improve our work and to guide what we do. It's always important to hear back from people who are actually on the in the schools and districts implementing, and from parents and so on, from all the varied perspectives that we have on this committee. Very helpful to hear from all of you. So thank you so much. I will probably reach out to the committee here in the next day or two, just with a reminder about that last meeting date, and to also ask to see if there's anybody else that perhaps wasn't able to join today that might also have a request for next time. So you'll be hearing from me again, a quick email soon. And thank you all again so much for being here and for participating in this meeting. Have a good day.